Many years ago, back in 2000, we started off a company called Business Shaper Group. It was helping companies grow, so we were helping them with their marketing, all aspects of those types of things. And then we were understanding as they were growing, they needed money. So in about 2013, we were particularly good at gaining access to grants. Grants were very easy to get hold of, and we were very successful at that. But then they started to fall off a cliff. So if you're quite good at gaining access to grants, you're probably quite good at writing equity bids. So today I'm going to sort of give you an idiot's guide of what information you need to gather in order to go for an equity bid. So, just a little bit about some of the types of things we do. This is quite small, so don't apologise. We review an awful lot of opportunities per month. Can be in excess of 100, 150 opportunities because there's a lot of people seeking funding out there. I'll share with you some stats in a minute that sort of will scare you a little bit. We then analyse and look what the company's trying to do. Sometimes we might analyse and say, actually go away for 6 months and go and do this, that and the other. Or sometimes we might say, yes, you're about ready. Then we can sort of help to look at your investment opportunity in more detail, see if we have investors for it. Then we go about improving that opportunity because generally 99% of the people that we come to talk to aren't quite ready. They'll be talking endlessly about their product and service and actually probably not talking enough about their investment opportunity. So we look to improve it. That can take anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. Then we create the actual sort of the investment opportunity with all the decks, with all the information. We then do some research to see what in our own network the investors that we can make introductions to, but we also go look for smart money, so people that can actually sort of bring something more than just money to your company. So it could be something like distributors, it could be partners within your industry that can help you. It's always trying to look at best sources of funding for your actual investment opportunity. So the main types of funding. We try and adopt. Monday? Yes, it is. Yeah, it's Monday. That's good. We try and look at a blended funding approach. So sometimes it's not necessarily all going to come from one source. So you could look for a bit of grant funding. You could, if you're buying some kit and caboodle, you could look for asset finance, which is your more traditional stuff. If you're making purchases of buildings, that's not really equity funding. Equity funding should just be about growing your company and creating what you need in order to go and sell. So we try and look at different sources of funding for people. So startup funding is generally, we look at pre-revenue companies or early stage companies. Oh, hello. I'm sorry, they told me to start, so if I miss bits, I can always talk to you afterwards.
Oh,
so that's
sorry.
fine. So obviously you've come up with an idea. I don't know where you are, if anybody is in what stage of companies you're looking at. Come up with an idea. You've generally hoped to have a little bit of cash in order to get that idea into some sort of form. Hello, do you want to come in? Okay. Boring. So everybody thinks jazz girls on that. So then you look for your family and friends round. So that's what you call your sort of initial safe round of funding. Investors typically don't get involved right at the start. They always want you to try and come with sort of an MVP, which is a minimum viable product or some sort of information that you've actually managed to gather about your opportunity. Then you'll be looking at your seed round. So that's your sort of first investment, your foray into investment. So this is where you've got to sort of build your case really concisely and make sure you put a lot about the investment opportunity rather than just getting very excited about what you're going to be doing within your company. Because a lot of people get terribly involved in whether it's an app or a platform or a bit of fintech or a product or service, and they forget to say that actually if you give me £100,000 or £1 million, this is what it's going to do for the company. So here's the statistics that I wanted to share with you. Last year there were 100,000 companies looking for funding. There is a lot of money sloshing around, definitely, because £7 billion worth of UK investments was put in. But this is the most important stat, is last year 0.6% of companies that were seeking funding were successful. So it's a really, really hard market out there. And generally investors will spend no more than 3 to 5 minutes looking at your opportunity. So whilst you feel that's your baby, you've been working on it, you've been nurturing it, you've been looking at it for some time, you've got to understand that there's a lot of investment opportunities out there. You've got to make sure yours is clear, well understood, well executed, basically as good as it can be. And I'll go on to show you perhaps some examples of how you can do that. There you go, that's my 0.6, I love sharing it with people. So basically, obviously the investors that we work with are looking at early stage or pre-revenue companies, so it's obviously the most tricky bit of investment to get, but equally it's the most risky. So they'll be looking at something between 8 and 10 times return. So when you're looking again at your investment opportunity, what you're trying to get money for, is looking actually at what the return on investment will be for the investor. So if you're asking them for 100,000, you've got to be sort of readily aware that angel investors will be looking at 3 to 5 years. They'll be looking at something like 800 to £1 million return. So it's not going to be like a lifestyle business. There are investors out there, but very few and far between. Angel investors want a sort of a nice, healthy trajectory on how you're going to grow and how you're going to get them their money back. Whether it's exiting, whether it's getting other investors, whether it's getting a VC on board. You've got to think of 8 to 10 times return. That's fine, okay. So it's tough out there. So I'm going to try and help you improve your chances, basically improve your odds. I always say investment is sort of gambling for grown-ups, because ultimately that's what it is, because it is the valley of death out there. The failure rate is enormous, so a lot of investors try and spread their what they're actually putting into. They could work on a syndicate, they could work on funds, or they could just be an individual putting money into your company. Right, so the number one thing that investors are looking for is the team, so it's you. They don't necessarily worry, some of them, too much about the product or service that you've got, but ultimately it's you that they're investing in. They've got to totally understand that you know where you're going and what you're going to be doing with this business in a very clear and concise manner. And then obviously they will then look at what you're trying to do within your company. Generally, investors don't like individuals, so they want you to build a team around you. It doesn't mean to say you've got to pay this team, but it means you've got to get people on board that are going to sort of fit your skill set. So if you're particularly technical, you might want to bring on as a non-exec or somebody for shares in the company. You may want to go and get somebody that's more emphasis on sales, or somebody that's more emphasis on financials. So it's building your team, because heaven forbid, in this risky startup arena, if something happens to you and you happen to know all the idea or all the technology, unfortunately that's going to be quite a risky, it's adding to the risk. So if you can build your team around you, that is very important. Go to places like LinkedIn even, and go and find people that have sharing your passion and your vision, and bring them on in the company. That's fine, that's okay. So obviously what you've got to do is think about what you're going to be doing within your this one's gone all over the place, sorry. So what do you do? Basically, within the sort of first few seconds of your investment deck, you've got to get over. What problem do you solve? So who are you going to be selling this to? How are they going to buy it? What problem are you actually going to be solving? The stage of the company is vital. Now, okay, you might be pre-revenue, but you need to say you're pre-revenue, but you've gone and spoken to some clients, or you've gone and spoken to some people that can be buying this service. Or if you are revenue generating, put it in there. I've talked to endless people that have actually got revenue for the last 2 or 3 years and forgotten to put it in their investment bank. They've happened to turn over £1 million, forgotten to tell me. Then obviously be very clear on what you need. So I'm looking for 50,000, £500,000, 1 million, whatever it is, but be very clear. You've got to put what you need, your use of funds, and what your valuation is. So your valuation is what you're valuing your company today in order to get investment in the company. So you've got to be very clear. Now your valuation, I understand, will be that, because ultimately you're probably quite early stage businesses. However, you don't have a lovely balance sheet to sort of justify it, but if you can justify your valuation by the validation you've got with your clients, and then what you're going to be doing in the next sort of 3 to 5 years to exit, then you've got a pretty good argument for why that is. If people say, oh, I don't know, I've had this again, I'm giving you sort of, I don't know what the valuation is, so it's up to the investor to offer me. You don't walk into a house and not know a rough idea of what it's going to be valued at. You need to be putting something out there. Might not what you get, but at least you've got a jolly good idea of what your valuation is. Size of opportunity, so your competition, you know, the ability to scale. Investors, again, they like to know that there's a massive opportunity to scale, and it's not just going to bumble along, because they'll look for you to just continue with your friends and family round or traditional lending. They want, you know, companies that they invest in to give them that 8 to 10 times return. So valuation, as I say, in early stage companies it's always really hard to come up with a valuation. However, you know, there's a plethora of ways of calculating it. I have an accountant that sits in our company, he does it. I don't really get involved. But basically, it's a combination of lots of different things. So things like traction, who have you spoken to, the market size, the stage of the company, all these things you've got to think about when you're thinking about your valuation. You know, don't be amazingly rude and say, you know, you're a startup and you're coming in for a £10 million valuation or something, because that's just bonkers. You've got to be realistic, but equally you've got to be, you know, have to think what you're going to be doing in the future. Have I left myself wriggle room, because I might need subsequent rounds of funding? So you can't go and give it all away right at the start. So it's just thinking about what you actually need for the next 6 to 12 months and what that's going to do for the company. Because then when you go for another round, obviously that's going to be a different valuation. So because you've obviously got further in the company. Some people come to me and say they need £1 million and they're offering 10% of the company or something bonkers. But they don't need £1 million. They need £1 million over 2 years. Well, obviously the company's going to grow. They're going to potentially give a lot of equity away at the beginning and then not have anywhere to go with regards to subsequent rounds. So it's thinking about what you need now and make it part of the journey. That's why you have friends and family, seed, Series A, that type of thing, or upper seed. You have your different areas of funding. So obviously you've got to think about what you're putting across in your investment deck. So coming back to my thing that people only read investment decks for 3 to 5 minutes, you've got to major on that investment opportunity. So again, your deck and everything that you produce, the sort of the information, has to be 80% about the investment opportunity and 20% about what you're actually doing. And that sounds bizarre, and you think they'd want to know every sort of nut and bolt about what you're going to be doing. But actually they're not. They want to know about the investment opportunity, what the ability to scale, who's the team, those types of things, not necessarily the minutiae. And if you say to them, well, can I show you a PowerPoint presentation, or can I show you my app, or can I show you, they don't really want to know at that stage, because it's all very top level. Once they understand that they like the opportunity, then you have all that information in the data room, and then they have access to it, and then they can obviously look into what you're doing. But it's got to be very, very high level for investors, because they generally have the intention of having a nap. So, sell the sizzle, not the sausage. So that's coming back to my point that actually, sell what you're going to be doing. Don't say, well, if you click on here, then you'll get a drop-down menu. This will make this easier. I get it all the time. And it's generally technical people that have built something, that have been so in love with building this glass or this platform, they want to share that with me. Investors won't. And so I'm a polite girl, and I'll listen for 5 to 10 minutes, but ultimately I want to know the salient points about your investment opportunity. What's it going to do? What's it going to do? Have an impact for the client, and how are you going to save them money, make them more efficient, all those sorts of things. It's not the minutiae of what you've created. So, coming back to sort of basics, if you like, is if you're going to want to gain access to investment, whether that's either a crowdfunding campaign, whether that's for an individual investor that you might go and find on LinkedIn or somebody you know, if you're going to be raising money of any sort, even if it's traditional lending, it's a good idea to have these documents. So you have the investment deck, so that's typically anywhere between 8 and 20 pages. It's very pictorial, it's very visual, and it has to get across the investment opportunity in that 80-20 way that I just mentioned. Then you have the investment memorandum. That can be more lengthy and have a little bit more detail, but it's got to still be quite easy to read and easy to understand. Then you've got to get a good set of financial forecasts. So how are you actually going to make money? How are you going to monetize what you're going to be doing? And they don't really need to be any longer than 3 years for your first sort of foray into this. Because ultimately, after 3 years, it's all pie in the sky anyhow. It's all predictions. If you think what you're going to be spending on stationery in year 5 matters, it doesn't. They also want to know what you're going to be doing in the next sort of 3 years with regards to your growth. Then obviously you need a business plan. It's all very well making these beautiful documents that investors are going to read, but then they will want to dig into the opportunity. So then you need that boring document that I don't really like, but ultimately it'll tell you everything about your investment opportunity. So that typically is a bit more dull, but it actually tells you your routes to market, your marketing strategy, what you're going to do with your financials, who you're going to be selling it to, your international aspirations and things like that. So your sort of more boring business plan, that goes and sits perhaps in a data room. You then need to literally, at the drop of a hat, be able to pitch your business. So you don't know where these investors might come from, and if you're sort of fudging around trying to get your pitch right, you've got to practice. So get to the point, get what you're going to be doing, because that's what's going to engage them. So if you're given an opportunity to talk to 100 people for a minute, for goodness sake, make sure you know what your pitch is and what your proposal is for your investment. Because we've had people fly in to meet with people and they've had to be ready within 24 hours, even less sometimes. And there's no amount of fudging around. Investors, if they want to talk to you, you've got to be ready. And then, as I say, all the sort of boring stuff, all your IP certificates, all how your algorithms work, whether it's where you're doing your purchasing from, all the sort of more sort of dull stuff, I would say, but ultimately that is important, all goes and sits in your data room. Don't bombard an investor right at the beginning with, all that sort of stuff. They just want to know about the investment opportunity. Ooh, what went into this investment?
Because it's been PDF'd. You're in the same room as me.
Oh, sorry.
It's gone from PowerPoint to PDF.
Yeah. Oh, well, never mind. Okay. That's some common mistakes. Okay, brilliant. So I put this together. I was actually doing a breakfast meeting, so that's why I put something stuck in a note. But anyhow, we're not having breakfast now, but there we are. Hey, ho. So, a lot of the things that I hear every day on a daily basis from sort of slightly bonkers founders, or they're all lovely, but sometimes come out with some funny things. So we're going to be the next unicorn. Yeah, everybody thinks that. It's okay if you're going to do it, but justify it. We've won awards. Well, that just tells me that you're probably quite good at writing bids or paying money in order to win awards, perhaps. No competition is an absolute class example. Nobody's doing what we do. This is the only thing of its kind on the market. And then, my accountant or an analyst will do 5 minutes of due diligence and they find somebody who's doing pretty much similar things in Japan, for example. So make sure, when you say there's no competition, make sure you're on it. Because 6 months ago you might have gone and looked, or even 6 weeks ago, there could be something out there. So keeping on top of what other people are actually doing, again, with the uniqueness in the marketplace. Yes, you potentially could be unique, but equally, some people might perceive you as having something quite similar to others. This is a classic one. We're aiming for 1% of $1 billion market. I've heard that. I actually had a Founders Day last week, and 1% of $1 billion market is the most bonkers way to work financials out. You have to work out your financials, what they're going to do. You can't say this market's worth 65 billion and I'm going to have 1% of it. It sort of doesn't work like that, but it's a very, very common mistake people make. There's companies out there that have done years and years in R&D, and they're probably very good at accessing grants. They're sometimes a bit of a red flag to investors because they think, gosh, these people are really good at getting grants and doing lots and lots of navel gazing and doing R&D. Let's go and sell it. So it's a really, you've got to go and sell your product or service. People say it can't be replicated. Well, most things can be reverse engineered, and you've got to make sure that you've got something that could be copied. Is there any way that you can go and protect it with an IP lawyer? Because the IP, if you can create IP, there's value in IP, and you can actually put that into your valuation. This is the thing. Look how our algorithm works. Everybody loves the word algorithm, and it's like that investors, that won't excite them. They'll want to know what it's going to be doing for something, not actually the minutiae of how it works. If you're constantly building your MVP or tinkering, investors won't like that either. They want you to actually get to market, go and sell some stuff. Even though it's not right, go and get some traction, go and get some validation, and then you can keep building and you can keep getting funding to keep it going. And then, you know, typically if you've not gone and sold any or got any letters of interest or even gone and spoken to any clients, that's a bit of a no-no. You've really got to go and actually get validation for it. You don't necessarily have to have made money, but go and get validation for it. And then generally, I see decks and there's 20 pages, and then right at the last page it'll just say, P.S. we want $500,000 for 2% of the company. That's not really helping me with regards to investment opportunity, but I have seen endless decks like that. And then please contact Peter at. Okay, so you've now hopefully learned a little bit more about how to convey that message, what to say and what not to say. And then I'm going to now go through some live cases that we've gained investment for. So I hope hopefully these can sort of try and demonstrate. So Gunner was a software, we're agnostic by the way, so we look at any investment opportunities, so we don't sort of stick to fintech or products or anything like that. We are agnostic, it's just basically a good opportunity. So we worked with Gunner, they had a lovely range of drinks, very low in sugar, they come below the sugar tax, so it's all sort of very, you know, very of the moment. And actually millennials don't like drinking as much as old people. So it's becoming much more prevalent that actually this sort of something different to Coke, Fanta, Sprite, those types of things. Just something more like craft beer, but it's now obviously non-alcoholic craft beer. So he was very successful at selling these in to companies. He'd already got them into WH Smith and somewhere else. So he came to us for his next tranche of funding, which was 700,000, being very clear on the front page for the equity stake of 23% of the company, and he was already selling in 4,500 outlets. So that's the sort of the key information that they want to know. Yes, it's got a beautifully aesthetically very pleasing picture to grab people's attention, but get across what the actual investment opportunity is. So then we went on, this was sort of the 4 pages of the deck, telling them a little bit about the product or service, which is obviously, you know, what I mentioned, but then go on to the team, which is very crucial. So obviously, you know, have these people done it before? Have they actually been in the drinks industry before? If not, they will have brought people in the board that will actually understand this. The soft drinks industry, so how does this fit into the actual, you know, competition? You know, nobody can say it's unique because it's not, but actually how can it fit into the industry? And then here's your set of financial forecasts. So if they go and get the funding in, you've got a very, very clear route of what they're going to be using the funds for and what the trajectory and the growth is going to be within the company. And also, if you need subsequent rounds of funding, so some people do, it's always quite good to put an idea that you might be seeking funding in Q2 of 2020 or something, so they understand there's a proper growth transition to the company. The next one was White Car, and I put this in quite a nice picture. So White Car again, very clear on the front page. You know, they were seeking 3 million for 25% equity in the company. He had traction, he was actually trading. So it's basically hiring a Tesla. They were all white, and they were £99 a day, and no other fees. So it was a very simple model that he was trying to go against, you know, traditional Avis and who have add-ons, add-ons, add-ons. He was just annoyed with this. He said, actually, we can make this thing a whole lot simpler. So you could, actually there was no queuing, you had the ability to open the car in your pocket, so it's on your phone, so you walk up to the car would open. It's all incredibly simple. He had a database of about 400 people that were using this White Car service. And I happened to mention to him, actually these people are going to be a high net worth, because generally if you're going to hire a Tesla, you probably, you know, you're not so price sensitive. And he did, within the first, I think about 3 weeks, we gained about £600,000 worth of investment from his people that were using the actual service. So actually, that's a brilliant story, because one, they all liked it, but you know, I was getting people phoning up saying, oh, I'll put £50,000 in, just over their breakfast. So it was trying to think about smart money, but also trying to think about where you can go and get these investors from. I didn't know these investors, but I said, actually, we can leverage what you're trying to do. It was quite interesting because he had some sort of failed tries at this, but because if you'd have seen his business plan when he first came to us, it was a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet. He's selling one of the most beautiful, most beautiful cars, and there wasn't hardly a picture of a Tesla on it. So it was just trying to say, sell the sizzle, not the sausage. It was literally a Word document, and it was very boring. So, he went and secured the funding. He's now going on to a subsequent round of funding in order to take it across Europe. So, I hope that gives you a bit of a better understanding of how equity funding works. As I mentioned right at the beginning, Business Shaper Group goes and helps companies put those investment opportunities together. So there's ways and means that we can potentially help you there. But we use this Angel UK platform in order to go and get the investors on board. So it's more understanding, basically. Angels of UK, it's more understanding brand. So that's where the actual investors come from. So we are pretty unique in the fact that we go and look at investment opportunities, bring to the fore the ones that we really like, and then we make them investment ready, make sure they're as good as they can be. So the white car, we wouldn't have gone out with that Word document. We had to create something that was much more visually impressive, and then we went out and got funding for them. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much what we do. So there we are.
What is the name of your
Oh,
company?
thank you. So really, I'm happy to, I saw some noddings, I'm happy to talk or take questions if anybody wants to ask any questions.
What is the name of your company again? I missed.
Pardon?
The name of your company.
Well, Business Shaper Group is the company that helps create the documents, so looking at the packaging of the investment opportunity, and then Angels UK is where we actually go and get the investors from.
So I have to interlink.
Yeah, I own both of them. It's just that the brands are different, yes.
And how much you charge for such thing?
Well, to do the actual investment readiness bit, that is completely depends, because lots of people come to us, we have to pick that we want to work with them, but we depends on how much information. So if they've gone and got all the financial forecasts together, they've got a pretty good deck, but it probably needs a bit of work. It can be sort of the lower end of the scale. And then if we have to create the entire presentation and the business plan, right at the top. So it takes it can be anywhere as little as sort of £800 at the beginning, right up to sort of 12,000. So it can be, and then the 12,000 we'd spend months doing, because it would require so much work. But if it only needs tinkering, probably only right at the lower end. So that's the sort of. Pardon? Yes, I can get cards for you in a minute. I'll get them in a minute. Yeah, thanks.
Do you only work with angel investors?
Yeah, because obviously the stage of most companies we work with, I'd say 90% of the companies I speak to are either pre-revenue or in that sort of that initial growth stage, because it's the trickiest bit of funding. If you're turning over 10 million and you only need another million, there's VCs out there, there's funds out there. Whereas at the tricky stage, this risky stage, although it is going to be your angel investors typically that will invest. So our database of investors is generally individuals, high net worth, ultra high net worth, family offices. So obviously they're quite risk averse though, I would say. So yeah, it's basically people perhaps have been self-made or have looking after family money that are looking to invest, and they have their areas of specialism. So some people really like green tech, some people really like fintech, but sometimes they look at sort of all sorts of things because they like a diverse portfolio. It's like houses,
What is the level of investment?
Generally, our investors typically invest anywhere between 25,000 and 250, but there are that will go in for $500,000 up to $1 million. But the general, amounts that people put in, and generally they syndicate as well. So let's say you're looking for 600,000, you'll probably get that from 3 investors, but they'll all know each other, and they spread their risks by all going in, and they like the opportunity, and one will do due diligence on that opportunity, but they trust the other 2 will put the money in, and that's how they like to work, because obviously one person just in the whole 600 is tends more risky. Thank you.
Are you going to be at the camp?
Yes, I will be in a minute, yes, or I'll be here for a minute if anybody wants to talk to me.
Yeah, I'll go on.
I think I've got to talk again. That's my thing. I've got to,
If you go,
Thank
I'm not sure I have
come
then.
back.
Okay, lovely.
Thank you so much.
You're
And what's your
welcome.
name, Julie?
Emma.
Emma. I've helped to just capture some of that. So you're meeting Emma and people watching you all the way from Kenya, everywhere. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Juliet Makapila.
Thank
Speak
you.
soon. I'll send it to you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.